good for Saturday morning.
I know. Thanks so much for holding this.
Yeah, I see you're just on a phone only, right?
Yes, I
That's
couldn't
okay.
figure out, it wasn't working right on my computer, so I just wanted to at least try to get in on the phone and go from there.
Of course, that's absolutely fine. You're the only one here thus far, but we can certainly, people can certainly jump in and pick up whenever they want. Did you have any questions or anything you wanted to talk about regarding the course, Elizabeth? Social work in general.
Well, I guess basically when I'm doing the DSM, figure out what try to find arrive at a diagnosis. Is there ever with them? Is there a right answer?
I mean, is the diagnosis absolutely correct?
Yeah, I mean, is there, for example, is there a definitive, for example, like with this week's, I remember, thank you for highlighting how I found factitious disorder. And so I'm curious, with those case vignettes, is there a specific answer, like a correct answer for each one of them?
Oh, embedded in the course. First off, let me tell you, and Xander is with us. Hi, Xander.
Yeah, I just made it on.
How are you? Is Xander your handle or
Xander, Alexander?
Oh,
Alex.
Alexander. Okay.
Sorry, I'm experimenting.
Good. So let me tell you both that this is being recorded so that I can put it back in the course for those that weren't able to attend. So maybe we'll touch on some areas that other people would have liked to known about but weren't able to jump in on this with us. So Elizabeth, let me answer your question. The course doesn't have a correct answer to all the vignettes. Okay. This and there is never ever the ultimate correct answer. So I don't want you or any other social worker to think that I'm never going to get this right. You're right. We render a diagnosis based on the information that we have. That's why assessment is so important. I think it's really the most important practice skill that we have. We are always assessing. So when you see someone for the very first couple of times and you're doing your full assessment, you're looking at referral information, you're looking at how they present to you, symptomatology, how they present to you. You understand from them their history of what they've been going through, things that they've tried to do to feel better. You will be able to render a diagnosis that's in keeping with all of that information, okay, all of it. And so these vignettes are totally incomplete. They leave out a lot of information, and there is a reason for that. It's so that we develop a practice skill set of assessing. I can certainly write a vignette with every piece of information that you would ever want to know about that person, okay? But that wouldn't help develop your assessment skills. It's developing the Socratic method of questioning, considering a particular hypothesis about what might be going on or a treatment approach that might be helpful. That's why they're so incomplete.
Oh, because I just feel like I could go on and I mean, it's like, well, yes, it could be this, but then there's it, and it's just, I mean, it's kind of, it's fun in some ways, like as Xander said, this is fun, but at other times I'm just like, oh my gosh, am I spinning my wheels here?
Right. Well, and if you've noticed with my comments, I've never, and I would never come out and say to someone, well, that's incorrect.
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
Ask you, have you considered this or have you considered that? Or what about this symptom? And
Gotcha.
when they say that their mother was abusive to them, if it didn't say that, just be more focused on what is in front of you so that you can develop, like the thing with factitious disorder, that got you and several others to go back and look at the criteria for that to see if it were more in keeping a better fit than what you already rendered.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely, whenever there were, I wouldn't say challenges, but someone brought up something different or you brought up something different, I was like, oh, back to the book. What did I miss?
Right.
So it's,
Yes, and it's yes, exactly.
That's the point, to get you
yeah.
back.
Oh.
And I would imagine by week 8, your DSM-5 edition is going to have little Post-it notes hanging off the edge of the page,
Yeah.
or the pages turned. You know, that's really one of the outcomes that I seek for students, is how well
My
are they reading this book.
I was going to say my autism page got ripped by accident.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, because the book fell and the paper is so flimsy.
Right. So that's it. There's really never a perfect diagnosis. I mean, even where I stand today in my career, there are times, and it doesn't happen very often, that, you know, I'll go and consult with somebody in the practice to say, you know, I'm thinking this, but somebody who knows the client, like the psychiatrist, you know, like, what are you thinking? Like, I can give you an example. I have a client who came to me with PTSD through a workman's comp case. She was beat up where she worked by students. Yeah. And so has not and will not be going back to that arena again, work environment again. But anyway, she came to me with PTSD. Obviously, she had some good injuries to her. But after the course of about 7 or 8 appointments, she began to present a little differently to me. Not what I would call standard PTSD symptoms like irritability and isolation and hypervigilance, you know, none of that. And it was more of sort of like personality traits that were showing up. Like she may have been a little bit more demanding and felt she was always right. You know, a little bit more of that was popping up. And so I went to my colleague, the psychiatrist, and who treats her also, and we talked about it. And we both had been seeing that. And we both decided to watch it a little further so that we could stay treatment focused with the PTSD and not get caught up into any kind of what we used to call Axis 2 kind of traits, personality traits. So there are times when I still seek some clarification about the diagnosis and also the approach.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So we're never perfect.
Yeah. Makes me feel more confident in my lack of confidence. Yeah. Sort of.
I can second that for sure.
See it like, you know, see it as kind of like a temporary thing. I'm confident that feeling incompetent or is going, not incompetent, but lack of confidence is going to wane.
Right.
What else?
Did we talk about the paper yet? Or
No.
No.
You guys
Please.
are brand new in here, so nope. We can.
Okay. I guess my only question is, for the character I chose for the movie, I just, when I watched the movie, the character I chose I thought would present as more diagnoses, but then now that I'm more familiar with the DSM and diagnosing, I go back and I'm having difficulty really zeroing in on which to diagnose my character with, I guess.
Okay, who's your character?
My character is Carol, Helen Hunt's character in As Good as It Gets.
Okay, that's
okay.
That's the, what's his name?
Jack Nicholson?
Yeah, but Jack Nicholson.
Helen Hunt. Okay.
Helen Hunt. Yeah, see, Jack Nicholson I thought would be the more obvious choice. He's clearly has OCD, and he has lots of different, maybe even like autistic spectrum maybe. But I picked Helen Hunt's character because I thought we knew a little bit more about her backstory. So I thought that might be interesting for assessing purposes. And she does some unusual things in the movie, which they play her up for comedy, of course. But so that might be indications of a diagnosis. But now I'm going back in and I'm having trouble finding it, especially now keeping in mind all of the all like the other detriments to health, or poverty maybe a little bit, and her just general stress of being human in her situation. Well, I'm having trouble diagnosing.
Well, you're right. You're right, Alexander. Probably the more obvious a client to choose out of the movie would be the Jack Nicholson character, because it's rich in symptomatology, and Helen Hunt's character is a little less so. But you've done quite a bit of work on this already. I'm taking that.
Yeah, no, I think I could definitely put together a good biopsychosocial assessment, just in terms of diagnosing.
So let me tell you this, and for those of for everybody else in the class that's not here, I think it says this in the directions about the assessment paper where it's first presented in modular 1. And if it doesn't, I think I will just make this a point of saying, the point of this assignment is that you get to exercise your assessment skills in a written format, and your diagnostic skills in a written format. And so if you need to embellish a little bit, you can do that. So, because this is an exercise for you to gain some experience. So if the Helen Hunt character has a little bit of codependency going on, or a little bit of anxiety go on, it's okay to build that up.
Okay.
So I know this is not a live client, so you wouldn't be falsifying anything for a live client.
Right, of course.
But so that you get to see yourself write these descriptions, describe what you're seeing, it's okay to embellish a little bit. And then that will probably help you with the diagnosing process.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right, yeah. Also, I noticed she was also the only character in the movie who isn't in treatment of some kind, or doesn't have a social network. So I figured there might be some things under the surface that would be easier to.
And that's the other thing, those are usually the areas that it's okay to add more description to that's not in the movie, is that background information.
Right.
What else? Anything else about this paper? Let me make a mention about the mental status evaluation.
Okay.
Keep in mind that when we render this mental status evaluation, and there are some descriptions in I think is it week 4 that it's asking you to do a mental status evaluation, or is it week 3 or module 3? Yeah, it's 3. That there are examples of this in the course material. And so what I would want you to remember, this is pretty key with this, is the mental status is a snapshot, your snapshot of what you're seeing, hearing, smelling, whatever, using your senses with your client in a particular spot of time. Okay? So there's no history added into a mental status. There's no statement by anybody else, his mother reports or his wife reports. It's just what you observe. And I don't know if I gave an example of that in the course or not. Have you got to do that a little bit?
The mental status exam?
Yeah, have you tried it? That was in week 3, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I have one, and I tried to run with it as you just described.
Okay. Okay.
In terms of, I can give you an idea what I said, what he looked like, and let's see, his attitude, what he smelled like, he was alert, what his speech and motor activity, how he was seated, an accent was present. I described the accent. I said he presented in organized fashion, but he tended to stray quickly to distract. Then the mood I described as hostile and irritable, but then alternatively cooperative, yet with sarcastic undertones. And then describing cognition, I said, and I described the eye contact, the facial expression, and then regarding like intelligence, I referred to like an elements of cognition test. Is that something you can do during a mental status exam?
Well, tell me what you would do.
Well, I wrote, it was to just determine, like, to explore, explore judgment. Like if you found a letter on the ground in front of a mailbox, what would you do with it?
Yes,
and higher cortical functioning and reasoning, like ask the meaning of the phrase, people in glass houses should not throw stones. And then I said those were met with sarcasm. Right. And then denied any history or presence of suicidal or homicidal ideation.
Right. That's great.
Okay.
Alexander, would you add anything to that?
No, I'm going to steal that. That's okay.
Well, we're in the same group, Alexander.
Oh, that's true. That's right. Okay.
So let me tell you that, Elizabeth, that certainly was pretty, concise and really covered all the areas. Be sure that you talk about memory, because what you're doing in mental status is you are actually checking in on their senses. Not just you're using your senses to check their senses. So when you talk about he's disheveled, his clothes are unkempt, his hair is not combed, he looks like he hasn't shaved in a few days. Nails are soiled. Speech, you want to talk about the frequency and whether it's pressured or not. You want to talk about ability to recall, like you were doing, Elizabeth, with some of those cognitive screens. You want to ask about memory.
Memory.
Important is memory, and you can do an easy, what I call, it's just a 3-item screen, and you pick 3 items like clock, tissue, and lamp. And you ask them to hold on to those items. Just hang on to those, because I'm going to come back later and ask you to repeat them to me. So that's a memory screen. And I would not go out more than 5 minutes before you come back and ask them, what were the 3 words I asked you to remember? Okay? I had a woman in my office. Now, this is a pretty unique case. I had a woman in my office on Wednesday. And she came in with these symptoms of sudden onset of auditory hallucination. Now, this is a woman who has no history of any mental health stuff, has no traumas, has not fallen and hit her head, lost consciousness, very professional woman in the community, came from work because she was so alarmed by this experience. It's happened a few times that she's brushed off, but it happened significantly for her the week before, and she was really trembling with this. I did, and I was the first person she came to see. She didn't go for any medical clearance whatsoever. And I did that 3-item memory screen with her, and I waited about 3 minutes, and she only got 2. And she was really rattled by that. So that's why the memory screens are kind of important. okay? And I will tell people this, be sure you can remember what the items are as well, okay? That the social worker remembers what the items are as well. So you can, yes, you can do those things. You can talk to if there's any positive or negative symptoms of psychosis that present to you. You know how sometimes people may be suspect. You may see their eyes flitting from one side to the other, looking around the room. You know, they may speak of being Mary Queen of Scots. You know, so you add that in. And you also want to check for level of lethality, which is suicide thinking or planning.
With the mental status exam, how subjective should we be? Or meaning is like I feel like when you're rating your clients, of course everything is subjective at some point, but if you're rating their appearance or their speech, I feel like some of that might be subjective, or some things might just be worth recording to some clinicians and not for others.
Right. So this is why it's the mental status is using a narrative format. That you are describing what you see. You're not grading it in any way, weighting it in any way. You know, on a scale of 1 to 5, as far as attire, he's a 5. You know, you're not rating it in any way because that's only unique to you. Okay. So you're descriptive. You're going to talk about, you know, he came in a press suit, you know, a tie, and it's an overcoat, and it's 90 degrees outside. You're going to be very descriptive. Because what you are writing, what you are saying, gives the next clinician a good snapshot of what you saw, so they got it as well. It's sort of like being a fly on the wall, you know, not being able to say anything, only being able to see it.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because that's what I tried to do, but then I went back and reviewed it and was like, oh, well, is this my opinion or is this, you know?
No, add the narrative detail to it. And when you read some of these, the language of a mental status in some of these examples, you will see that. You won't see any scales being used.
Right. Well, not just scales, but just like words like disheveled. I
think pretty much everybody knows what that means, though.
Well, but I guess, yeah, like it has to get to a certain point for the clinician to say, oh, we're now in the disheveled zone, opposed to slightly less disheveled. I don't know. I feel like that's sort of
you can certainly qualify the phrase that you're using. If you're saying he appears disheveled, hair is tossed around, you know, hands are soiled, clothes are soiled, you know, you paint the picture.
Right. No weighted words. No, that's right.
So to some degree, they are subjective, you know, because it's your experience of that person.
Right.
And I think this, actually, I'm looking at it now, the mental status exam resource that was put in the course does say that. It says often the definitions are subjective in nature.
Right, okay. So I was thinking some of that might be cultural as well, regarding if, you know, formal attire is more accepted, or shoes are going barefoot is fine. So that might be a red flag for some clinician, or might be normal for others.
Right. And so and this is, you know, after your you collect all your demographic information, then you do your mental status. I'm talking in the framework of the paper.
Right.
Then you do your assessment. You write up how you assess this person. And so in there you would say, even though he came with a tie and a jacket and barefoot, I've learned that this is part of his cultural.
Right. Okay. All right.
What else? Anything else about the paper?
Oh, well, just with formatting, so is it, should it be in standard APA, or because it's an assessment, can it be look more like a document? I guess what I'm trying to say is more like an actual assessment form as opposed to a paper.
Now, there was a guideline in this description of the assignment.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll relook at that.
It's a good question, because you know what? There's probably 5 people that aren't here that would have the same question.
Okay.
So no question is a poor question. So there are a guideline for the biopsychosocial intervention planning outline of a movie character in modular 1 under the assignment, and you can use. There are 2 examples.
Let's see.
Yeah, you can use those categories for your levels of heading. Okay. And you're pretty neutral when you're talking about like educational occupational history. There's nothing about you when you're writing up that, you know, they graduated from high school and went to Harvard and then worked on Wall Street. There's nothing subjective about that at all.
Okay. When
it comes to your assessment, which is further down below, actually it kind of fills this out for you. It is the thoughts and opinion of you. Okay, so I have never read an assessment where the person who wrote it said in the context, well, Angela thought this, that, Angela being the social worker, thought this, that, and it was always this writer or this, you know, this provider or this social worker. You can certainly use the word I, because it is your assessment. I will let that go. And you know, when we write up, in our jobs, when we write this up, nobody's going to go in and check for APA. But let me tell you, if you don't write well, it becomes a firestorm for people.
Yeah.
I'm going through that now at my practice with someone, you know, cannot write whatsoever, and been in the field much longer than me. So I am looking at the basic structure of APA, that you have the levels of heading, your grammar's correct, your spelling's correct, that you pretty much that, you know, if you're using references at the end, that you have the correct format for that. So I'm just going pretty basic with it. It would be very unusual to see an in-text citation in an assessment or a quote.
Okay.
Yes.
Very unusual to see that, and I would not expect to see that.
I was going to ask about a reference page for the DSM.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, I know. What I wanted to ask is regarding the setting the goals and objectives. So after I reread what you had suggested, I had created 3 different goals, and with each goal, 2 different objectives. Does that seem like it's sufficient, or?
Yeah, you don't have to go on and on. At least 2 objectives are fine. I'm just looking in the course now, and I had thought that I had maybe I put it under resources. The treatment plan, I did. I put that up in late August under resources.
Yeah.
I put in a treatment plan, the framework for doing a treatment plan. So I think it's pretty clear. So yes, you know, the goal is broad but measurable. So is the objective. Then you have your method. Well,
because the reason why I asked it. I had been using my paper that I had done in practice too. And we had just done one goal, one objective. But then when I saw the treatment plan sample that you had provided, it was have at least 2 objectives to 1 goal. So that's why I went back and kind of added to it.
That's fine. And and I do say this in my resource guide that you should note at least 2 or 3 objectives, but if you have 2, you're fine.
Okay, super.
Yeah. Yeah, so any other questions about writing a treatment plan, goals and objectives? Any other questions? You will never go wrong in writing a goal plan if you turn it into a measurable statement with the phrase, and I underscored this in my guide, as evidenced by or as observed by. You're taking something intangible to tangible, okay? So he will no longer use alcohol. Well, that's kind of broad, but how will we know that? Well, we'll know it by self-reports or observations. You know, I don't know, it depends upon your agency. If it's an agency that treats those that abuse and addict, there might be random screens, you know, and that would be part of making a goal measurable.
Okay, yeah, measurable. Realistic and measurable. And time. All right.
Any other questions? About anything, you got me here now, so it's good.
For the differential diagnosis, would you like us to come up with, basically, should we provide more evidence for why X, Y, and Z are not good choices, or not good diagnosis, or should we find alternatives to what the vignettes suggest?
So, let me see if I understand.
Like for example, I feel like because the vignettes are purposely vague, like you said, not vague is the right word, but don't have the whole picture.
Right.
It could apply, many different diagnoses could be appropriate.
Right.
So would you like us to suggest, I don't know, 2 or 3?
Well, 2 is fine, or even 1, but I do want to see something, and it doesn't mean that, that you excluded them, you looked at them and you decided that it wasn't, because in some of these, like the Helen Hunt character that you're looking at,
right?
You may not be able to exclude 2 or 3 categories,
right?
So without more information.
Okay, right.
So, but there are some, like Elizabeth, when we were talking about the one, I think that was last week, with the Carol, her name was Carol, that client, I think, with the factitious disorder, that would be part of a differential diagnosis. You came up with one diagnosis, but then you also looked at factitious, maybe a third one.
That was this week, actually, and it was factitious was actually, that was when I had gone through the differential, the way the DSM suggests you do it. Factitious was and then when I was rereading it the following day, that's when I thought, this looks a lot like borderline too.
And that's really what I'm looking to see, that you're exercising your thinking into that DSM-5 edition to see what else it could possibly be. And explaining it a little bit, not just saying I looked at borderline, I looked at factitious, and I ruled them out. I want to know a little bit about why you did that. Just to build up on your critical thought.
Okay.
What else? Anything else about the course or the paper?
Is there, it might have said in the syllabus, probably did, but I can't recall. Is there a expected length? Like, or
I always get asked that question.
yeah, I just cause I could write a book, but
Yeah, and you know you don't want me to read a book.
exactly.
So let me see. You know, there's like 20 of you in the course. So if everybody wrote 25 pages, you know, I'd be reading quite a bit for quite a while.
Yeah.
So let me see. I would say it says a maximum. It does say it, a maximum
Okay.
of 12 pages,
Okay.
which doesn't include the cover sheet
Right.
or the reference page. Okay, doesn't include that. So the core of it. Yeah, and that's a decent sized paper. I mean, somebody that writes 25 pages, I'm likely to, you know, send it back and ask you to edit it down.
Yeah. That's good. I was an English major in undergrad, so learning to write very tight papers has been a challenge, but a good challenge.
Okay.
So that's good. You know,
Okay.
I'm used to writing. I mean, it's been a long time now, but I remember like every week we had a 12-page paper, and that was just like normal.
Right.
But now it's
in the writing mode.
Exactly.
Right. And this is really about being succinct and descriptive at the same time. And you know, one way that you know you're getting it is to ask somebody you know to read the paper and see if they understand it.
Right.
You know, if they get what you saw.
Yeah, it's always good. It's yeah, it's hard to edit your own work, especially if you spend a long time with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then it's your baby. You don't want to change it.
Right. Let me add something about progress notes.
Okay. Yes.
Be sure. You know, it doesn't have to be a verbatim that I said kind of stuff, but be sure that the notes reflect, number one, what you did in the session, and number two, how it ties into your treatment plan.
Okay.
So if there's a particular objective that you worked on in the session, you know, you have to say that, you know, so that when I go back and look at the treatment plan from your note, I can see the tie-in.
All right. Right, that makes sense.
And there's some examples in the assignment description of progress notes that'll be helpful.
Okay.
What else? Even anything about social work outside of the course is fine.
Oh.
You know, I will add one thing. The university, I believe, is going to be sending out an email to everybody. We're trying to think of ways to help our students become and stay more engaged with the course and with the program. These are our online MSW students. So do look at that. We're thinking about probably doing something social media-wise with maybe a live Zoom meeting like this with different people, just to give you some more information, not about the course, but about social work in general. So look for that email.
Okay.
If you have any suggestions, do send them back because we do want to know.
All right. Yeah. I mean, personally, I think the Zoom meetings, the live classes, are definitely the most helpful, even if they're like maybe twice a term.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's what I miss the most about online courses. I mean, I love the online system, obviously, but I miss live interaction.
Being in the room, right?
Being in the room, exactly.
Speaking to somebody rather than having to type discuss, and there's only so many ways you can say I appreciate, I value, I thank you.
It's that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys, I did, in each week I did a little 3-minute video
Yes.
lecturette, I guess. What I really want you to get out of the week. What did you think of that?
Oh, I like those. Yeah, those
Yeah.
are very helpful. Our Alex and I are in the other
Yes.
class, and he does that too.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I find it helpful.
Good.
It's
It's just human. Anything that makes it more like actual human contact is really nice, I think.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about having students do a video introduction clip in the beginning of the class. You know how we introduce ourselves in a discussion board? I'm actually thinking about having folks do a video clip for that very reason. Ungraded, but for that very reason.
Yeah. We did that for the field placement. We do videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you folks in a field? Where's your field placement?
Oh, well, I just wrapped mine up. So but I did mine in a adult day program for adults with physical and developmental disabilities.
Great.
Yeah.
And where is this? Where are you, Alexander?
I'm New Jersey. I'm in Asbury Park.
Okay.
Greater Asbury Park
Bruce.
area. Still haven't seen him in the wild yet, but it's only a matter of time.
His birthday now. He's having his 70th birthday.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, where are you?
Well, right now I'm in Florida, and I did my placement in New York.
Oh.
Cool. So you did your placement while you were living in New York?
Right, and then I moved back to Florida, and I'm supposed to do my next placement here in Florida with a hospice organization.
Oh, very good.
So are you both graduating in the spring?
No, summer,
Yeah,
August, tentatively.
Or August or December.
Okay.
Hopefully August if I can. It depends if I get another block placement.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. How you liking Florida?
So far so good.
Where are you? Whereabouts?
I'm on the East Coast in Delray Beach.
Oh,
great town.
Okay. That's my folks live down there. Yeah.
I was just over there. My practice is in Southwest Florida, in Fort Myers.
Fort Myers.
So, but I live up in North Carolina, so I go back every few months and spend a couple weeks there. And so I just returned last weekend. And actually, what am I saying? I just returned on Thursday, and I had spent 3 days over at Singer Island.
Oh, wow.
Not far from
beautiful.
where you are. Yeah. It's pretty blustery. Okay, anything else?
No, thank you.
No, but I'm sure as soon as we sign up the call, I'm going to think of a dozen questions. So.
Right. Well, you know what? I'm going to put this out there that if we want to do this we're into week 5. If we want to do this like in the 7th or 8th week, we can do this again.
Okay.
All right. So, it might be shorter, might be just kind of wrapping up things in loose ends.
Sure.
But we can do that. All right?
Perfect.